All right, so moving on from the political instability in India, let's start to look at some of the cultural aspects. By far, the most influential of which is the development of Hinduism and Buddhism. And the development of Hinduism and Buddhism is a very organic process as compared to the other major religions of the world. Um, Hinduism, especially, doesn't develop from one founder or a single prophet the way that, say, Christianity or Islam does. Um, it's a development of a mixing and diffusion of various polytheistic beliefs that come from native Indians themselves, from a group known as the Aryans that migrate into northern India after the fall of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Um, and it develops over a period of time that's kind of unknown to most major religions. The Hindu faith and the Hindu practices develop literally over thousands of years. Most of the major religions haven't been in existence for that long. So let's talk about where all this come from, where it all starts, what it all means. So as these groups of Aryans, these kind of nomadic peoples from Central Asia, migrate into northern India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, they bring with them certain religious beliefs from their land that begins to blend with the native forms of polytheism, the native gods, the native practices. And what you get is a belief system that is syncretic, meaning that it has, it's taken parts from all different sides. And these beliefs and these rituals are written down over hundreds of years in a collection of works known as the Vedas, or the Vedas. Um, so the Vedas contains prayers, hymns, instructions on how to make sacrifices, religious rituals, and they become sort of this, ritualistic system of belief that is governed and kind of exclusively run by holy men known as Brahmins. And these Brahmins, because they have access, to the religious texts, and they have the ability to perform rituals, they begin to gain a lot of power and a lot of wealth. They really become the dominant class in society. And after a couple centuries of this, people begin to question the Brahmins and the reasoning behind all of these rituals. And they begin to develop a sense of, well, we're doing all of these things. Why are we doing them? And so, over the next several hundred years, this leads to the creation of what's known as the Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads come from many different sources, from Brahmins themselves, from other members of society, pretty much all anonymous. But the Upanishads set out to provide reasoning behind the rituals. They are looking to develop a system of belief that kind of defines the already existing practices, which that's pretty interesting because if you look at the other major religions, we'll take Christianity, for example. The belief system, the reasoning, the why we do things, it essentially is established first, and that's kind of how most of the other major religions exist. Um, this is, God, and this is why you should honor him, and this is, why he's the Almighty One. And then later on down the line, the rituals, the sacrifices, the ceremonies are developed to reflect that devotion. Whereas in Hinduism, it develops in reverse. The rituals, the sacrifices, the ceremonies already exist. long before people start talking about, well, why are we doing this? What is the, the reasoning behind it? Okay. Now, another thing about Hinduism that makes it unique among the major religions is that it is so incredibly varied and diverse. There is really no single exclusively accepted practice in Hinduism. Now, with the other major religions, there are variations, there are different branches, different denominations. But there is usually some singular truth that all members of that religion must apply to. Again, going back to the Christianity example, for example, you can believe different things about how to pray, when to pray, even what books of the Bible are legitimate and not legitimate. And that's been an issue in Christianity since its beginning. But there are some singular truths that if you are a Christian, you must believe and uphold. Namely, Jesus was the Son of God and the Messiah, died on the cross for everyone's sins, was resurrected and raised to heaven on the third day, right? If you don't believe those three things, you are essentially not Christians because that is the basis for the entire religion. Hinduism doesn't function like that. There is no just absolute set of certainties that all Hindus must believe and must apply. Now, the Upanishads set out to change that to provide a reasoning to it, and that kind of leads to the philosophy behind Hinduism. So, very briefly, I'm going to kind of try to summarize the large beliefs behind Hinduism. Again, it is an incredibly diverse belief system. It's one that you could spend a life studying and not know every aspect. So by no means is this supposed to be some comprehensive breakdown of Hinduism. Um, so keep that in mind as I move through this. Again, the College Board doesn't want you to be an expert on it, but they want you to have a basic working knowledge, right? So the general philosophy behind Hinduism, as explained by the Upanishads, is that life, the material world that you see around you, is illusionary. It's not quote unquote real. Things are there, they're physical. If you knock on a door, it's actually a door and it's actually physically there. It was made by a person and sent to your house and attached by a handyman. But in the philosophy of Hinduism, the only true reality is what's known as the Brahman or the world soul. This is a one collective soul, a one collective force that unifies all of the individual souls in the world. And at one point, all of our individual souls were a part of that Brahman. Now, the purpose of life in the Hindu belief system is that everyone is trying to achieve reunion with that world soul, with the Brahman. And in order to do that, we must ignore the pulls of this illusionary material world. We must ignore the distractions of greed, of power, of lust, the worldly desires, which, I mean, that's kind of a message behind most of the major religions. Now, here's the thing though, and this is again pretty unique to Hinduism as a major world religion, is those things, those earthly distractions, are not seen as sin, as essentially evil. They are seen as expected parts of everyday life. People want to have a good life. They want to have lots of money. They want to have power, right? And whereas in a lot of the Judeo-Christian religions, those things are seen as bad, as evil, as sin, as things that, turn you away from God. In the Hindu view of things, they aren't that. The Hindu belief system generally doesn't pass that judgment on good or evil. It simply sees them as a distraction to what you should be looking to attain. Okay. Now, also according to the Hindu belief system, in order to reunite with the Brahman, each individual soul, which is known as an Atman, needs to be reborn multiple times. That it will take you multiple lifetimes of effort and duty and reflection and hard work in order to attain that liberation, right? Which is known as moksha. Now, this process of being reborn multiple times, which is known as samsara, happens based on another concept, which is known as karma. And karma dictates what position in the world you are going to be reborn in your next life. And it's based on the actions of your previous life. Um, if you are an immoral, unfair, unjust person in your previous life, then karma will determine that in the next life you'll be born in a lower station in life. Okay. So this is where kind of the moral judgment comes in. Um, Karma regulates the actions of your lives as opposed to the idea of sin that you see in, Judeo-Christian Islamic belief systems. Okay. Now, how does one reach moksha? Um, Well, according to Hindu beliefs, and this ties into the system of varnas and the castes and the jati system that we'll talk about in a little bit, moksha is obtained through different methods depending upon your social station in life. If you are a Brahmin, which is kind of the priestly social class in the Hindu system, then your moksha is going to be attained through prayer, through ritual, through bringing spirituality to others. If you fall into a different social class, then that social class determines what you need to do in order to attain moksha. You need to work and provide and produce and be as outstanding as possible within the confines of your social class. You shouldn't try to go outside of that social class. You should simply do your duty to the best of your ability within that social class.